I found that. Have I shown you guys this blue chicken? I've got this blue chicken, and by me, got this blue chicken, I mean my son has this blue chicken, and it makes this noise when you squeeze it. Isn't that great, guys? It's a great noise, I think. It's a terrible noise, but, it's kind of fun. Anyway, guys, hey, how's it going? Welcome back to Notes. Guys, we had a good conversation today about the test, and I think we all grew a little bit today, even myself. So, we're all going to get better, guys. Just make sure you keep at it. I mean, that's the best thing, guys, is you just don't quit. Because once you quit, guys, it's hard to recover, okay? So, hey, new chapter, new you, right? So let's get started. Today, so this chapter is going to be about this thing called absolutism. We haven't really got into absolute governments just yet, but we're going to kind of get into it today just for a little bit, all right? But what you should have learned in the last notes were the Dutch, right? The Dutch Republic, and how the Dutch Republic, guys, kind of rose to power, and then the reasons it kind of fell from power. Well, today, guys, we're going to shift gears from the Dutch, and we're going to go right into all the horrendous problems that England is going to find itself in. And you're going to see, guys, at the heart of the problem is the fact that the English kings are going to believe that they are absolute. And the problem with that is that England has this thing called Parliament that's usually used to being listened to. So, our essential question today, guys, is what were the political and religious causes of the English Civil War? So notice, students, I said political and religious. So, all right, there's going to be political causes of this war, and there's going to be religious causes of this war. Okay? So pay attention, guys. Hold on to your seats, and let's get started with it. Pause if you need to. That ought to wake you up like every 5 seconds. Just have the chicken go, bah! Anyway, pause if you need to. Pause if you need to. We're moving on. Okay. All right. Let's give you a little bit about England in the 1600s. So, England for a while, guys, has had this thing called Parliament. All right. And England and the king share power. The king's job of the government is to basically enforce laws and fight wars. Parliament's job in England is to pass laws, okay? So, guys, that's how it works. The Parliament passes laws and passes taxes, and then the king is supposed to enforce the laws and taxes and things like that in the country, okay? So, guys, English kings and Parliament work together, and they go along with each other. Now, Parliament is made up of representatives throughout England. So, I forget what they're called, guys, but, we call them districts here in the United States. But every little area of England elects its own representative to basically go to Parliament and speak for the people of that area and tell Parliament the needs of the people in that area. All right? It's a representative government. Okay? We do that in the United States today, right? We have representatives and senators that we elect from our states to go speak for us, okay? So England kind of has the same thing, and Parliament is made of those kinds of people. Now, the representatives are usually nobles, wealthy landowners, and religious leaders, all right? So these would be the people that are most likely to be in Parliament, although there is a growing group of that middle class, those burghers, those, middle class, they're not noble, but they've got some money. There is a growing group of those people that are starting to want to be in Parliament. Now, like I said, the king's job is usually to enforce the laws, to fight wars, and to basically keep peace in the country. All right? So that is the king's job. And like I said, the king's job is not to make the laws or judge the laws, all right, but simply to enforce the laws. Okay? So remember, we talked at the very beginning of this chapter, guys, about the 3 powers of government, right? Make the laws, enforce the laws, and judge the laws. Well, in England, those are all divided, right? The king enforces, Parliament makes the laws, and then the courts judge or interpret the laws. Okay? All right, now, like I said, Parliament's job is to usually vote to raise money to fund the king's activities. So what that means is, guys, let's say the king wants to fight a war. The king goes to Parliament and says, hey, I want to fight a war, and Parliament votes on whether or not they should give money and resources to the king to fight the war. And usually, guys, if the king has a good relationship with Parliament, then Parliament will vote, yes, we will help you out, king. We will fight the wars against those scumbag French or those scumbag Spaniards. We will send you the money, all right? Okay? So do you guys understand the relationship? King and Parliament working together. All right? Okay, not king working by himself, not king doing what he wants without asking Parliament. Literally, guys, king and Parliament working together. Pause if you need to. Am I giving some of you guys a heart attack by doing that, guys? Well, maybe I'm waking you up. All right? Wake up. The blue chicken says wake up. Anyway, pause if you need to. All right, now, England in 1600. Let's talk about this. So, there is England. Now, this is a more modern map, all right? This is actually a modern map of Europe, all right, which is stupid. Why did I use a modern map? But a modern map of Europe, guys, it looks like this. So, there's France and Spain. Germany doesn't exist in the time period we're talking about, all right? And just northwest of France on this little bitty island is England. Now, England at this time is actually made up of, do I have a better map? Come here, hold it right there. All right. England at this time, guys, looks like this. England's at the bottom. You've got this area called Wales on the left. You've got Scotland in the north. And then on the whole island to the left, you've got Ireland. All right, now it says Northern Ireland, guys, but it is Ireland at this time. So England right now is literally just England, but what you see is over the course of time, English people start to settle in Wales, settle in Scotland, settle in Ireland until, guys, England is going to control all of these areas. All right, so it's actually separated by continental Europe, right? So guys, if you look right here, it's not on the continent, right? There's this thing called the English Channel, guys, right here between France and England that separates England from the mainland of Europe, okay? So, like I said, England is its own country, guys, but it also controls Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Now, later on, guys, all of these areas are going to be united into this thing called the United Kingdom, which is what we call Great Britain today. We call it the United Kingdom, or we call it Great Britain. All right? So, anyway, but right now it's still kind of divided, even though England controls most of the territory. Now, Ireland used to have their own king until, guys, Henry VIII, you guessed it, good old six-wife Henry VIII, right? The playa. All right, until he, guys, banished the Irish from having a king. He said, from now on, basically, I'm going to be your king. So, as you can imagine, guys, the Irish probably don't like him very much. And I'll be honest with you guys, neither do the Scottish, because remember, the English slowly colonized and took over their lands. All right? So, Scotland also had a king, but what happened was, basically, they too fell under English rule. All right? So, guys, what I'm trying to tell you is England has slowly been taking over these areas, and then one day, in the 1800s, guys, all of it is going to belong to this thing called the United Kingdom or Great Britain. But right now, it's like England, Scotland, and Wales, and Ireland. Okay? All right, now, here's the thing about Ireland. They are very passionately strong Catholic. All right? Scotland is Presbyterian, and if you guys remember from the last chapter, Presbyterians are kind of like, they're Protestant for sure. They believe in kind of their own churches should have autonomy from, each other, and they're not Anglican. And England and Wales, of course, are Anglican. So you've got three different church groups here: Anglicans, Presbyterians, and Irish Catholics. All right? So even though England is conquering these areas, England is very much divided religiously. All right, we still awake? Good job. All right, am I going to be doing that the whole notes? Maybe. So bottom line, England controls all of these areas, but they're still very divided. And as a matter of fact, the Scottish Presbyterians, they don't like the English, and neither do the Irish Catholics. And that's going to cause problems, guys, for the rest of pretty much English history. Pause if you need to. All right, now, Stuart England. Okay, guys, so we're going to talk about a family of rulers that are going to rule after the Tudors, okay? So let's talk about James the First. Like, let's talk about him first. All right, so we're talking about James the First first before anybody. You guys get what I'm talking about. All right, so who is James the First? So here's the deal. Do you remember Henry VIII, right? Henry was a tutor. Edward VI was a tutor, even though that says Edward VII. I don't know why it says that. Edward VI was a tutor. Mary was a tutor. Elizabeth was a tutor. That means their last name were the Tudors, all right? So that was the Tudor dynasty, okay? That family of rulers. Well, guess what? That family of rulers is gone. Do you know why? Because Queen Elizabeth I, all right, the one that defeated the Spanish Armada and is going to run Puritans out of England, she died without an heir, all right? She did not have a child to leave the throne to, all right? She was called the Virgin Queen, okay? Anyway, she was never married, and she did not have a child to leave the throne to. So guess what? There's a guy named James Stewart, all right? And James Stewart is the next in line to take the throne as far as family lines go, all right? So here's the thing, though. James Stewart is the King of Scotland, even though Scotland's under English control, they still have a king. And he basically is going to now become James the First of England, all right? The Stuarts are related to the Tudors, but they're not like, father, son, heir, things like that. I forget what their relationship was. I should probably look that up. But anyway, the Stuarts, guys, are the next people in line, okay? So you've got a Scottish king that's about to become King of England, James the First. All right, so now immediately, guys, there are problems between James I and Parliament right off the bat, okay? So remember, guys, we're talking about political causes and religious causes of the English Civil War. So, Elizabeth died with England in lots of debt, all right? Elizabeth had fought wars. She had, like I said, fought she had fought the Spanish Armada. Bottom line is, guys, England's in a lot of debt, okay? And when she dies, England is in a lot of debt, so they don't have a lot of money. So, let's pretend that, guys, maybe James is going to want to fight a war. Well, Parliament is not going to really give them money to fight the war because they don't have a war. So here's where the problems kind of begin. It begins in a lot of debt. Isn't it funny, guys, how in life most things begin about money, where somebody's in a lot of debt, and that's where problems start. All right, so here's the deal. All right, James I takes power, all right? And Parliament basically denies James I money, all right? So James I is continuing wars with Spain, and he says, hey, I need money to continue this war. So here's the problem, though. Parliament doesn't like James I. Why? Well, one of the reasons he's a Scottish king, but another reason is, guys, most of Parliament is Puritan, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit, all right? So, bottom line is, they say, no, James I, we're not going to give you any money. So James I says, well, we're fighting a war here, so if you're not going to give me money, I guess I'm going to have to raise money without Parliament. Now remember, guys, who has the right to raise money and raise taxes in England? Is it Parliament or the king? It's Parliament. So do you think Parliament's going to sit back and be like, well, okay, sure, fine, go ahead, raise money without us? No, they're not going to do that. So, guys, guess what happens? James I says, well, in order to raise money, I'm going to start raising taxes on nobles. So all nobles will have to pay higher taxes. And guess what, guys? He does it without asking Parliament. He says, from now on, this is a thing. All right, all nobles are going to pay higher taxes. So, James also says, and you know what, guys, and while we're at it, from now on, I'm tired of this, Puritan crap. We're all going to be Anglican. I want unity, all right? So, Scotland, quit being Presbyterian. You're going to be Anglican. All of you Puritans in England, you guys stop that. You're going to be Anglican, and that's it. Irish Catholics, you're going to be Anglican. Now, let me ask you something. Do you think the Irish, English Puritans, and the Scottish are going to be like, oh, well, I guess we'll be Anglican? Heck no! Not after all that they've been through. So, Parliament is made mostly of Puritans, so when you have this king saying, hey, I don't care about your Puritan beliefs, get that crap out of here, we're all going to be Anglican, of course, guys, Parliament is going to say, absolutely not. All right? So, now, if things weren't bad enough, James I has this friend called the Duke of Buckingham, all right? Now, the Duke, guys, a Duke is a title, all right? So, a Duke, a Duchess, a Lord, a Lady, those are all titles. So the Duke of Buckingham is James I's friend. And the Duke of Buckingham makes a lot of money selling royal titles. Now, you guys, remember when I told you there's this middle group of people, wealthy merchants? We called them burghers in the last chapter, right? They're usually wealthy merchants and townspeople. They're not noble. They weren't born noble, but they've got a lot of money. But because they are not noble, they are not allowed to own land, they're not allowed to be in parliament, and they're not allowed to participate in government. So here's what the Duke of Buckingham did. The Duke of Buckingham says, hey, why don't we sell noble titles to all of these middle-class merchants? Then they'll have our back and we can have their money. But here's the problem, guys. If you're a noble and somebody is selling noble titles, that makes you feel like your nobility is cheapened, right? Does it make sense, guys? You know, like in England, they can knight you, they can make you a knight, even to this day, but the queen has to knight you. Well, what if somebody's just started selling titles that say, hey, you're a knight for $10. Anybody can be a knight. It makes the title of knight cheap, right? So that's what the Duke of Buckingham was doing. He was going around selling titles to make money for himself and the king. So look at all the ways, guys, that James I is pissing off Parliament, right? He's passing taxes and raising money without Parliament's consent, and him and his buddy, the Duke of Buckingham, are selling titles, which make the nobles in Parliament very upset, okay? So, guys, we've got some political issues there, but we've also got some religious issues with James trying to impose the Anglican Church on all of the British Isles. All right, so here's what happens. A lot of Puritans under James I say, F this, we are getting out of here, we're going somewhere else. So guys, this is where the American colonies really start booming, is because of all the people fleeing England. So a lot of people are going to flee England and go to the Americas, and this, guys, is some of the beginnings of the American colonies, although Jamestown has already been established at this point, the very first American colony. All right? So, guys, there's lots of effects of this, too, yes? Pause if you need to. All right. Is that just getting old? It's probably getting old, all right? But anyway, I think it's probably keeping you awake to get the blue chicken in the ear. All right, now, let's talk about some more problems between James I and Parliament. Well, remember how I told you that James I was fighting a war with Spain, but it was really expensive, right? And James I couldn't get Parliament to raise money, so he had to raise it on his own. But bottom line is, James I says, all right, fine, I'm going to make peace with Spain, okay? Now, here's the deal. When he stops the war and makes peace with Spain, Parliament's going to be like, whoa, wait a second. Are you stopping a war with our Catholic enemy? What are you, a friend to Catholics? So, guys, now this was a sign in a lot of people in Parliament's mind that, what if James I is a secret Catholic? All right? Oh no, not secret Catholics. All right, so another thing is that James I started to relax English laws that persecuted Catholics as well. So here are two strikes against the king that make him sound like he's Catholic. He's relaxing laws against Catholics, and he's also stopping a war with the Catholic nation. So guys, now all of the Protestant, Puritan Parliament is going to be like, whoa, do we have a Catholic spy as our king? All right, so one more thing, guys, that really pisses off the Protestant Parliament is that Charles' son, all right, okay, or excuse me, James I's son, Charles, is married to Henrietta Marie, which is the Catholic daughter of Henry IV of France. All right, remember Henry Navarre, the Edict of Nantes, that guy? He's got a daughter named Henrietta Marie, or in French it would be Henrietta Marie. But anyway, Charles and Henrietta are married, all right? So, guys, 3 things that make James I look like some kind of Catholic sympathizer, and you know what, guys? Parliament, which is largely Protestant and Puritan, do not like it. So, guys, how's that for some religious causes of the English Civil War? Yes? Yes. Pause if you need to. All right, now, James I dies, and Charles I now becomes king, all right? So guess what, guys? Charles I, remember, the guy that's married to Henrietta Marie, all right, the son of King James I. So he becomes king, and he continues raising money, passing taxes without Parliament, and doing his own thing. So guys, here are two kings, the Stuart kings, and they are not in any way involving Parliament in any of their decisions. So guys, you could say that Charles and James probably believe in the idea of divine right, right? I am chosen by God. I do not need to ask Parliament. Yes? But you see how that's a problem though, right guys? Because Parliament under all the Tudor rulers got used to, for generations, working together with the king. So, the Parliament and the King of England are not getting along in any way. Now, another thing that Charles did in order to raise money, because remember, he can't raise money because Parliament won't give him any money, was he basically enacted these things called forced loans on members of Parliament. He basically said, hey, every member of Parliament is going to loan the king. If you won't give me a tax, you're going to loan the king this much money. And I'm going to enforce it because I'm the king. And if you disobey me, I will send my troops and come after you. So once again, guys, now things are getting really dangerous because the king is now threatening members of Parliament, okay? So by this time, guys, Parliament has pretty much had enough of all of this nonsense, all of these shenanigans, all of this chicanery, all right? And what they're going to do, guys, is they're going to get together and they're going to be like, look, we need to put our foot down on this king and we need to show him who's boss, all right? So, what they do, guys, is they get together and they pass a bill called the Petition of Right. Okay? A petition, guys, is like kind of like a bill or kind of like a law, all right? A petition. It's kind of like you're saying, hey, from now on, this is what it's going to be. Now, what the Petition of Right actually said was, Parliament called and said that they would give Charles money. But, if they were going to give him money, he was going to have to sign the petition. What did the petition say? That basically, from this point on, only Parliament can pass taxes and raise money in England. So guys, think about this. Charles I is now getting told by Parliament, hey, we'll give you money, but you've got to sign this law that says from now on, we're the boss when it comes to passing taxes. Now, do you think Charles I is going to be like, oh, okay, sounds fair? Absolutely not. Charles I is instead going to well, actually, he agrees first. But anyway, he does agree. I'm an idiot, guys. He does agree. That was like a letdown. He does agree, but he was angry about it, guys. And then after a few more arguments, he shuts down Parliament. And that's what I was getting at, guys. All right? In the end, he doesn't agree to it. All right? So at the very end, guys, he says, from now on, no. Parliament is not allowed to meet anymore. So, guys, he shuts the door to Parliament and doesn't let them meet, guys. For 11 years, Parliament is not going to be allowed to meet. Now, there's this thing going on called the English Civil War that's going on in that time period. But basically, guys, Charles I shuts down Parliament. All right? So look at everything that's led up to this point so far. It's about Catholics and Protestants, but it's also about who has the political power to pass taxes and raise money in England. Is it the king or is it Parliament? Okay? Pause if you need to. All right, now, let's talk about the personal rule of Charles I. What life was like under Charles I, okay? So, Charles ruled for 11 years without calling Parliament. And what that means is, guys, it's got a name for it in history, the 11 years tyranny. A tyranny, guys, means like rule of a tyrant. And a tyrant is somebody that rules through brute force. Okay? So the 11 years tyranny is like a negative thing. It's not meant to be a positive thing. So Charles is going to rule for 11 years without calling Parliament. Now, do you think Parliament, which is made up of wealthy landowning nobles, is just going to sit back and have their power taken away from them? The answer is no. All right? But to make things worse, guys, Thomas Wentworth, which is the Earl of Strafford, an earl, guys, once again, is another title. You've got dukes and earls and duchesses and lords and ladies. And so Thomas Wentworth, guys, is the Earl of Strafford. He's the chief advisor of Charles I, and he continued to raise money without Parliament's consent. So no matter what, guys, Charles I basically says, hey, I'm going to raise money to do my thing with whatever I need to do, fight wars, whatever. I'm going to continue to raise money, and I'm not going to ask Parliament for it. All right? Now, to make things even worse, guys, to ramp up the tension, I know I've said to make things even worse like 800 times, guys, but to ramp up the tension is the Anglican bishop, the bishop of the Anglican Church, guys, his name was William Laud. he tries to force all of the English Isles to adopt Anglicanism. So this bishop goes around Scotland, Ireland, and Wales and says, from now on, I am going to enforce us all to be Anglican, and we're all going to use the same prayer book, and we're all going to use the same everything. Okay? Now, when William Laud does this, Scotland stands up and says, "Oh, no, we're not going to take this anymore." You like that little Scottish accent? It's not bad. All right. So, Scottish, remember I told you guys they're Presbyterian and they hate Anglicanism, so they rebel against Laud's policies. As a matter of fact, when they're reading the new rule, the guy that is reading the rules to, I forget what the church was called in Scotland, guys, but the rule was being read, and this dude got beat. I mean, beat bad. I think he got beat to death for even considering the idea that Scottish people have to be Anglican. All right? Pause if you need to. Kind of like the defenestration of Prague. Okay? All right, now, this is what happens is called the Long Parliament. All right, now, I know, guys, we're doing a lot here, but we're a little bit behind and we're trying to knock it out. All right, so, Charles is forced to call Parliament because there's a possible war with Scotland. Now, remember, guys, how Charles has not been calling Parliament for 11 years. And now, guys, he's got to fight a war maybe with Scotland, and he's going to need a lot of money for that. So, guys, Charles I basically has to go to a parliament that he's given the middle finger to for 11 years and say, "Hey, guys, can I get some money?" How do you think Parliament is going to feel about that? So, Parliament starts by impeaching Wentworth, throwing him out, all right? And they impeach Laud and throw them out, and they have Wentworth and Laud executed, heads cut off, all right? So, guys, Charles I asked for money, and their response is, okay, give us Wentworth, give us Laud. Those guys are losing their heads right now. So, Parliament then says, all right, now, Charles, if you want money from us, there's got to be a rule that you've got to call Parliament at least once every 3 years. There cannot be any more of this not calling Parliament crap. All right? So, Charles says, okay, yeah, whatever. Can I have an army? Can I raise money for an army to fight the Scottish? But Parliament says, ooh, we'll give you money, but yeah, we're not going to give you our troops because remember, guys, nobles have their own troops. We're not going to give you an army because if you had an army, you might come after us. So, guys, there's a big fight now, right? Okay? Charles thought he was going to get his money, thought he was going to get his army, but Parliament backs down and says, yeah, we're not going to give you an army. Now, Parliament said, hey, I've got an idea. We'll raise the army, King. All right? You don't worry about raising the army. We'll raise the army, and that way we can trust the army. So Charles is like, wait a second. No, I'm going to raise my army. Parliament's like, we're going to raise our army. So, guys, guess what happens? In 1642, King Charles tries to invade Parliament with his own troops and arrest his enemies, but they get wind that this is going to happen ahead of time, and they all escape. So now, guys, Charles I has shown up into Parliament with troops, and most of the people are not even there. Nobody gets arrested, and now, guys, Charles is seen as an aggressor that was going to take over Parliament. So do you think Parliament, guys, likes the fact that Charles is trying to invade Parliament? No! So, now Parliament says, all right, F you, Charles, you want to invade, you want to fight? Fine, we're going to raise our own army, and now we're going to fight. And now, guys, it's war. It's English Civil War. Was that dramatic? I know. Okay. Pause if you need to. We're almost done. Okay, guys, the English Civil War. There's not much you need to know about it except Parliament wins, okay? Parliament allies with Scotland, all right, which means they have more troops. But another thing is, guys, Parliament is led by this guy named Oliver Cromwell, who is a military genius and a Puritan, okay? So, guys, with the armies of Scotland and being led by Oliver Cromwell, a Puritan military genius, guess what? Parliament wins the English Civil War in 1651, and afterwards they vote to execute Charles I. They behead him. So, guys, here is a wood carving of the time period of Charles I. It's a print, guys, of Charles I, head dripping blood, and Cromwell is like holding it up. Now, after that, Parliament does something crazy. They abolish the king. They abolish the House of Lords, which is the upper house in Parliament, and the Anglican Church. They say from now on, we're not going to have a king. We're not going to have a House of Lords. And basically, Parliament is going to rule England. All right? And guys, that is the end of the notes. So think about what we've learned about, guys. We've learned about political causes, and we've learned about religious causes. Sorry to keep you so long, guys, but you know what? We've got a lot caught up today. All right? You guys have a great one.